Hello there, welcome to what is the first podcast I think I've ever done on this channel. This, obviously being a podcast, will be a longer form. Seen that YouTube recently brought out this nice little feature. Don't know how these are going to do, so stick with me. I'm not scripting this in any way, not that I really script many of my videos anyway, but this one is definitely not going to be scripted, and it's going to be unfiltered a little bit. And for this episode 1, we are doing Star Trek Picard, all of it. Now that seasons 1, 2 and 3 have fully concluded, I'm going to talk about sort of the mixed bag I found Star Trek Picard to be. Actually, I might do an episode like this on all the different Trek series. Maybe. To be clear, I'm not doing episode by episode or anything like that. Just how I feel about the show overall, some of my insights and observations, and again, the kind of the mixed bag that the show was. I mean, it wasn't universally good, and it wasn't universally bad. I'd like to say overall, I've definitely enjoyed it. Just to clear that up, I have enjoyed it from start to finish. And like any show, it took a while to find its feet. The thing about that bugs me is effectively, this is like season 8, 9, and 10 of The Next Generation. And bite me, it is. It's what it is. The entire cast at one time or another have appeared in one form or another. They've all appeared. Along with a load of extra new characters, it has had its ups and its downs, and I'm not going to go on an Easter egg hunt here, so we're not doing that either. But there's so much, clearly a lot of love gone into the show, and it's been made by people that know Star Trek. I mean, Terry Matalas did a stellar job of season 3, and I cannot praise that enough. However, we're not starting at season 3. We are going to be starting with season 1 and covering some of these sort of attributes and features of that season before we move on to season 2 and then on to season 3 and share my thoughts and observations. And feel free to leave yours in the comments below, or in any other forum that YouTube end up pushing this on. Like, share and subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon. I'm probably going to do that a lot in this because stammering, losing train of thought, it happens. Hopefully I'll remember to edit it out, but who knows. Right, let's start. Season 1, Star Trek Picard. And before it started, and I mean this is part of it now, that before the show started, when it was first announced, I was super pumped for this show. I mean, I loved The Next Generation. Again, I'm not going to say The Next Generation was my absolute favorite. Quickly cover that. And The Next Generation had its ups and downs. I mean, the first 2 seasons, I think there were more bad episodes than good. And the good episodes were outstanding, but there were a lot of stinkers. And it's a shame because those seasons had Tasha Yar, and I really liked Tasha. However, moving on, Picard, I was so excited. DS9 was always mine. It was always my Star Trek. That's the Star Trek I loved. I also really like Enterprise, and I know that's a bit controversial because people seem to not like it. But we went a long way getting from there to here, and there's been a lot of steps in between, and that's not a bad thing. However, I was really excited for it, and I thought return of Patrick Stewart, I think he's had an outstanding career. I mean, he's played one of my favorite interpretations of Captain Ahab. If you've never seen it, the Moby Dick movie that he did, and it's actually really good. I don't know why it's not more widely known. Patrick Stewart is a fantastic actor. He can pull off villain, he can pull off obviously Shakespearean characters, he can pull off grandiose, he can pull off pretty much everything. And despite his advancing age, he's still got so much charisma, so much screen presence, so much charm that pretty much he can carry anything. And I do say pretty much because there were some things worming their way into season 1. If I'm to believe, and I don't always believe these things, but if you were to believe all the behind-the-stage gossip, that Patrick Stewart's clause in his contract was that he wanted to be involved in storytelling and he wanted the show to reflect things that are going on in the world, like Brexit and various other real-world politics, which personally I'm all for with Star Trek, in particular Star Trek. If any forum's going to ever cover that, it's going to be Star Trek, isn't it? I mean, Star Trek's always been political. It's always been about controversy. It's always hidden it behind the science fiction veneer, but it's always been there. Sometimes blatantly on the surface, punching you in the face, and other times subtle and quiet. A good example would be in Star Trek Enterprise, when they had an entire AIDS storyline that completely got missed by people. They didn't register it was happening, but they empathized with it and thought, oh, that really sucks for T'Pol, that her entire people reject her because of something that happened to her that wasn't her fault, a disease she can't control. That was an entire allegory for AIDS, and they spun it over several seasons. It was brilliantly done. And unfortunately, one of the failings, I would say, of Star Trek Picard Season 1 is it doesn't portray those things. It alludes to things like Raffi's drug use. Raffi's clearly using drugs. We learn that more in later seasons. Clearly, she was using drugs. It skips over a lot of stuff, and if we believe what, as I said, all the behind-the-scenes drama that was Patrick Stewart wanted in on the writer's room, and he got his wish, and he's the one that injected all this politics into it, but not in a good way. That, to me, hurt the show. I don't actually know, personally, because I don't know insiders. I do know a few people here and there in the industry, because I used to work in it. I also casually, in passing, know a few people. But no one that works on Star Trek. I'm based in Britain, in case my accent doesn't give that away. And Star Trek, not really known for filming in Britain. A little bit maybe, but not so much. Although Patrick Stewart is British, he doesn't film his scenes over here or nothing. So, yeah, I don't have personal insiders. I hear the odd thing, but most of my information comes from secondhand, which is why I normally find it to be very dubious. I don't really trust mainstream media. I don't trust non-mainstream media. Unless it's something I can verify myself in one way, shape or form, I tend to take everything with a grain of salt and assume that a little bit of distortion has happened between the original fact and it reaching my ear. And I find that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. So, personally, and as an observation, yes, I think that Patrick Stewart, from what he said in interviews and enough things that I've read, he probably did inject some of his own politics into this show. But again, that's not actually a bad thing. It's all about the execution, and that's where Season 1 really started to sort of fall apart for me. I mean, they introduced a whole series of new characters. The only real TNG characters you get back are obviously Patrick Stewart's Jean-Luc Picard. You get Jonathan Frakes' Riker. You get Troy. And you also start getting additional characters like Raffi. You get Elnor. And I'm going to just do a few of my personal thoughts on those characters. I really like Raffi. Raffi were good. She was good in Season 1. She was good in Season 2. She's good in Season 3. And fuck, she's excellent in Season 3. But in Season 1, I don't think any character was excellent. I think they were good. Except Jonathan Frakes. Jonathan Frakes has been a delight to watch through this entire thing. Although there were certain creative choices I found odd in Season 1. I never... shoot me. I'm allowed to dislike something. I don't like Elnor. I don't know if other people out there did like him. I don't know. I don't know if you did. I don't know if you didn't. I'm sorry if you did and I don't, and we have a difference of opinion on this. You're entitled to like his character. I couldn't decide what Elnor was supposed to be. I understand what all the story of all this is meant to be. Obviously, we've time jumped many years. We've basically time jumped the same amount of time from Next Generation ending to now, more or less. It's not quite the same, but it's more or less. And obviously, Picard's done other things. He's reached Admiral, he's had new ships, Worf's done something to the Enterprise E, as we find out in Season 3, and he did something. He did something. I want to know what. But we find out that, you know, lots of things have happened. We already, of course, knew about the detonation of the Hobus star that ultimately saw the downfall of the Romulan Empire, something that really never should have come to pass. We know what splinter timelines were created because of that, which are actually canon. Star Trek Discovery's made that prime canon, by the way. And yeah, we know all of that. So we know the Romulan Free State exists. I do like a lot of the things we got in the show, like seeing the original series Romulan Bird of Prey, vaguely. I didn't, as I said, really like a lot of the fragmentation of the Romulans, and I don't understand why the society didn't in any way sort of recover. I know where they're going, obviously, with the reunification of Vulcan. And the idea that they sort of invented a boogeyman in this show. We found out that Mars has been burned. Why? It's like, it's a demonstration of tell, don't show. It only shows clips of it. But telling something, saying something happened, is kind of irritating to me. It's one of those, it's a bad writing trope. I don't like it. Now, I know this show had the time jump, so obviously it's going to go back and say, well, this happened. And Picard's angry. And obviously we got that infamous moment of his little conversation where he's asking, like, oh, step down to captain, I need a ship. And the sheer fucking hubris response. So, yeah, it's infamous. But then again, do we think swearing doesn't exist in the 24th century? Come on. But, 25th century, sorry, by this point. Near enough. Pretty much. Oh, Jesus. See? Stammer. It's going to happen. As I'm just reeling this off memory. Yeah. But we encounter, like, the Jacques Vache. This new boogeyman that makes no sense. We're starting to see what is heralded as a new type of android, although we don't know that. And we sort of get introduced to these new characters. And it's all very quick fire because it's only 10 episodes long. Now, luckily, it's not episodic. It is effectively an anthology, so that's all well and good. But it never sits right. There's something about season 1, the pacing, everything. It time jumps a little too much for my tastes. And there's just not enough character development. I can't get to... We want my Elnor, stick with him. I don't get to know him. Not really. He's barely in season 2, and I didn't like him in season 1. He's like every character suffering from season 1 bad writing. And his character was humorless. He lacked charm. These are all my personal opinions, my personal observations. It's like the show needed a new warrior character because they didn't have Worf, and they thought, hey, you know what would be a good idea? Let's make that new warrior a Romulan, not a Klingon. Won't that be fun? And no, it was not. It wasn't smart, it wasn't clever. It was interesting, but again, it was this sort of creating a new character is all well and good, but there was just he had no charisma. He was like a charisma void because he was played as this, the absolute candor thing, which could have been played for a lot of comedy. And I would have appreciated that. Give his character sort of bumbling comedy element, as well as keep him as a great warrior, which is what they were going for, but it just falls flat. Because the Romulan subplot has been kind of done. I'm sorry, but J.J. Abrams already did it. And there's stuff left to explore, but it's just like, come on, the Romulans again. Eventually he gets off-world, and they spend far too many episodes of Picard trying to get off-world. It's like, come on, this is the long-time future. If I really want to get to the other side of the planet in the 20th century, or 21st century, I could. Why is it by the 24th/25th century, Picard's finding it hard just to get a warp ship? With his connections, his friends, hell, we know there are civilian ships in the Federation, and they vastly outnumber those of Starfleet. So why was he struggling? He shouldn't have been struggling. He should have been able to find a ship, even if he had to buy one. It should not have been difficult. Anyway, we meet the La Sirena. An ugly as sin vessel. I'm sorry to say that. It's an ugly ship. But it is an example of another civilian ship within the Federation, which is all well and good, and I like it. It has echoes to me of a Vulcan design, although we do know it is a human design. But it's a very, very ugly ship. However, let's be candid, with absolute candor, the Han Solo wannabe is actually quite a good character in Season 1. He's a good character in Season 2. I'm just saying, he's good in Season 1 as well. Yeah, so if we're being honest with ourselves, Captain Rios was a Star Trek attempt at a Han Solo. A bit like O'Connor, back in Next Generation, only they did him a lot better this time. He's a brilliant character, but you've got an introduction. It feels a little bloated sometimes, I think, season 1, because remember, these are 10 episodes. You got 10 episodes to develop a character, develop a subplot, and get to know these people. I felt that, although I've absolutely adored 7 of 9, I love Jeri Ryan. Not literally, not weird. I don't know her personally. I love her as an actress. I've liked her in a lot of different things she's been in. Even back when she was in, before she was famous, I saw her crop up in Diagnosis Murder, things like that. She was always a joy to see. And she did a lot of, TV movies, as I recall, back in the day. And there was one which was, I think, loosely based on a true story. And I'm sorry, I'm going purely off memory here without looking this up. And her sister gets murdered. And it's by a guy that's actually obsessed with her. And for some twisted, deluded reason, he murders her sister. And he's confessing her love and his love for her and asking her to marry him in the courtroom and everything. It's a weird film. TV movie. Quite good. Stars Jeri Ryan. Made in something like 1992. Something like that. Maybe 94. In that sort of ballpark. I'm getting off topic. Yeah, you get a lot of characters introduced. I mean, for example, just in this one season, you get Raffi. You get 7 of 9 brought in, which, by the way, just actually, while I'm on that, the 7 of 9 connection to Patrick Stewart's Picard is only logical in the sense of they're both ex-Borg. But it's like, that means nothing. I'm sorry, but there aren't a lot of ex-Borgs floating around. It was really nice to see Hugh back, but just because they're both ex-Borg doesn't really mean they've got anything in common. He was Borg for a blink of an eye compared to 7 of 9. The trauma they both endured, certainly bad, but I to be honest, he took it a lot more personally than she did. Probably because she was a child and had more time to acclimatise, but that's not the point. 7 of 9 actually still used her Borg name. That's how different we're talking their experience with the Borg was. Her inclusion felt a little weird, but ultimately it made sense. It was fine because ultimately, it went somewhere. I am annoyed that they brought Icheb back, but didn't bring back, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher his name, Mano Imrahiri back to play him. I know he's not always a very popular actor for some reason. I don't know why. I tend to not try and get to know actors. I find them to be disappointing human beings a lot of the time. But they could have brought him back, even if it was just for that one scene while he got murdered. I did like the whole little extra story about the Rangers and that kind of stuff, and the Federation not living up to its own ideals. A lot of things like that always made sense to me, which I'll get to in just a second. Going back to bloated cast, you get Agnes Jurati. Jurati being an apprentice of Bruce Maddox, helping with the androids, the synths as they're now known, which have all been banned because of the Jacques Vache, although we don't know that yet. You get Captain Rios, you get Elnor, you get Soji, you get the new character Adam Soon. When the hell? I am currently, actually, as of making this, in the middle of a series on the Soon family, and I've already done Adam Soon very annoyingly before he reappeared in Star Trek Picard season 3. When did Noonien get busy and have a son? He was never mentioned. This I don't like. I don't like retconning to invent new characters. Noonien never mentioned he had a biological child. Data and Lore never mentioned it. Juliana never mentioned it. But yet he exists. I mean, fine, they could have been estranged. There could be any number of reasons for it. And hell, I'm not against it entirely, but it is a little pet peeve. We obviously get the return of Jonathan Frakes, a character who we do know. One of the things I did really like, actually, before I get onto some of the other characters, I really liked the holograms aboard the Lacerena. I know I don't like the ship. I think the ship's a bit crap, mostly because it's very generic sci-fi. It's not interesting. It looks like it could have been in Buck Rogers or Battlestar Galactica or Star Wars. It doesn't even look particularly Trek. It's very generic sci-fi, and one thing for Star Trek is Star Trek ships are not generic sci-fi. A Klingon bird of prey doesn't really overly look like vessels you would see elsewhere. A Borg freaking cube really doesn't look like many sci-fi vessels. Another character we did get was Laris. Laris was fantastic. This is all season 1, and it's like, what the hell? It's like there's so many, and there's not enough time to get to know them. We find out about an entire... I'm going to do an episode on this, so I'm not going to elaborate on them too much here. But an entire colony of androids, and they have jellyfish ships. What the hell are those things? They make no sense. But whatever. Fine. Have jellyfish ships. They're indifferent to the extermination of the human race. Fine. That's fine. It's another sci-fi trope, but fine. It's oh my god, I'm thinking of it. The Game of Star Trek moment between the Romulan brother and sister, was what the hell? Was she really trying to hump her brother? I mean, I know Romulans are alien and maybe their sense of morality is a little different to ours, but come on. It's a TV show. We don't have to... We can make believe that they don't have such a different morality. And it's probably not what they were going for, but damn if that's not what it seemed like was happening. It was like brother and sister were trying to, get it on with each other, and no. Just no. Season 1 to me was a very, very slow-paced and mess almost of a season, which never seemed to really get anywhere. I didn't like it. I am honestly going to say I was ranking it, and I may have even mentioned this in one of my videos last year or so. I ranked Star Trek Picard Season 1 as amongst the worst Star Trek I've ever seen. I found it not difficult to get through. I don't find any Star Trek difficult to get through. I'm a huge Trekkie. I love Star Trek. And for all of my complaining about it, damn am I happy it exists. But yeah, it wasn't the best. It had the potential, and I thought, you know what, this is going to go somewhere, and it is well made. It's got good production value. It was well acted. It was slow paced. And just before I move on to Season 2, I just want to literally point out the data in the room. Data. I have, and I don't care what season 1, Season 2, Season 3, I am not happy they brought Data back. The way Data died, sacrificing himself for his captain, for his crew, for his ship. It was an honourable way to die, as Worf would say. It was a brilliant ending, and a film that I actually think is underrated. Star Trek Nemesis is a lot better than we remember. Go back and rewatch it, it's a pretty good movie. And Data dying in that film, it had the emotional bang that film needed. It was almost enough to make a grown man cry. Almost. And bringing him back, I hated it. And the bad CGI, I mean, it was bad. The bad de-aged. They didn't even bother to really de-age him properly. They kind of smoothened him out. He's gained weight. Not an insult to Brent Spiner. That's not an insult. He has. I've built out as I've got older. I'm actually about a stone heavier than what I would like to be personally. So, it's not shaming the actor in any way. It's natural. But that's the problem. Data's not natural. And worse than that, it wasn't even fucking Data in the flesh, so to speak. It was a goddamn simulation. It was a dream or whatever. It was not Data. They should have de-aged him. The technology, we've seen it on Star Wars with Tarkin and Leia and Luke. Hell, with body doubles. And they could have had Brent Spiner just do the dubbing. I'm not saying that's the route they should have gone. But I am saying that it looked bad. The route they went down looked bad. And it got slated online. Not by me personally, but it did get slated online. And that, it does take you out of it for a moment. It takes you out of the show. It takes you out of the moment. And that I had a problem with. I didn't like it. I really didn't want them to bring back Data. And they did this whole emotional farewell that, I'll be honest, I had to rewatch the scene because I kind of got lost in what was happening. I thought, how is Picard talking to Data? What the hell? And then Picard becomes an android. And I genuinely thought, in the moment they did that, I thought, they're recasting Patrick Stewart because he's getting old. He doesn't want to do this anymore. They're going to put Patrick Stewart, they're going to put Captain Picard, rather, in a new body and just be like, yeah, screw it. He's now Channing Tatum or something, I don't know. It's like, that's what they're going to do. And they didn't do that, and I'm glad they didn't do that. But then there's been a lot of things in the following seasons. I'm like, well, isn't he technically an android? Why is he not like super strong? Is that not typically what androids are? I mean, I know he was a golem, supposedly, and blah 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 reasons, but come on, why even kill him? Why fucking kill him if you're just going to put him into an android body but not give him any like super android abilities? Because you might as well. If you're going to do that, you go all the way. Why, for that matter, would you put him into an android body but then make that android the same physical age as Picard? If I was Picard, I'd be like, could you not have made me 20? Why am I still like 100 years old? Why am I not 20? I'm in a damn android. This is literally, this body is like weeks old or some... Try not to swear. Come on, I'd have been pissed, but that's me. Moving on, Season 2. And Season 2, right, I've heard a lot of fans say that Season 2 was a step in the wrong direction. Because after Season 1, I mean, there was a lot of complaints about the sort of copy and paste starships in the final battle. Hundreds of Romulan ships, hundreds of Starfleet vessels, and they were all just copy and paste. It's like but there was a reason for that. There was an actual in-universe reason for it, which was obviously after the destruction of Utopia Planitia and decimation of the fleet, Starfleet built the Inquiry class as a jack of all trades, and they built a lot of them very quickly because they could. Because Starfleet can build ships like no other people, apparently, except for the Dominion and the Borg. Maybe they can really churn them out. And if they were building the same ship over and over and over and over and over again, it was really easy. That's the in-universe explanation. Makes sense. It is logical, and I don't personally have an issue with it. I think everyone that was making an issue out of it is just they're into starship porn, which is a lot of things Trekkies are into, and I love ships. I do, but I also love in-universe realism. I love reality. The reality is, for example, during the Dominion War, they should have churned out tons of Defiant-class ships and Akira class, and they did eventually, but they were throwing old Excelsiors and shit into the ring there, and they were just getting creamed by the Jem'Hadar. It made no sense. You throw your warships in a war, not your science vessels, right? Anyway, getting off topic. Season 2. Season 2's it's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Which, I got to stop using that Doctor Who reference, but there we go. Right, Season 2, a lot of people didn't like it. They thought it was a stinker of a season because it's all set on Earth, they're driving cars, they kill Elnor, and rewind, my opinion on Elnor's not high. It's like, oh no, Elnor's dead. Oh no. That'd be like someone shooting C-3PO. I don't like C-3PO either. I really love Star Wars, but I don't like C-3PO. He annoys the hell out of me. Love R2. R2's fantastic. 3PO, Jesus Christ. And, get over this, he is Luke's brother. C-3PO, Luke's brother. They got the same dad. Anakin made him. Yeah, he built him out of spare parts and was probably originally another android, but I don't care. C-3POs, we know him, built by Anakin. And if you go off that, if in the Star Trek universe, Alton and Data are brothers, so are they. Also, I can't believe I didn't pick up on this, and let's go back. Alton Inigo Soon. Another weird Soon family name, right? Initially, superficially. I am so dumb sometimes. I didn't realize until Season 3 was on. Alton Inigo. His initials are AI. Sometimes I am profoundly dumb. And moving on to Season 3, after talking about my own stupidity, there's Season 3, Season 2. I told you I'm going to do that a lot, unscripted. Season 2, right. So, the bit of Season 2, I actually thought, people were saying it was not in the right direction, it's not good. I thought, fucking brilliant. Q comes back. Damn! Q is back. I was so happy Q's back. And they de-aged him right. Kept him a little soft focus, and then he snaps his fingers. And suddenly, he's old Q. He's like, my wife sat in a chair melting Q, apparently. Apparently he was attractive. I'm not entirely certain. But whatever, Silver Fox Q has entered the house. And yeah, he's off. He's not right. He's all over the place. We get Guinan back. Again, we're being inundated with characters, but we're being inundated in Season 2 with characters we already know. Q snaps his fingers and he changes something in the past. Something that happened in the sort of midway, sort of the quarter way through the 21st century in 2022, basically. And it's one of Picard's ancestors. Of course it is, because, she is. And And it's Q, and obviously he can do what he wants. And it does contradict something that Picard said in Star Trek Nemesis, again, actually mentioning that. Picard, Shinzon asked Picard whether Picard's always explorers or always warriors, that kind of stuff he's asking him. And Picard says, I was the first Picard to join Starfleet, the first Picard to leave the system and stuff. Now, we do know that Picard once mentioned that there were Picards that went to live on Mars, but he never mentions this explorer ancestor. It would have been a nice thing to maybe tell Shinzon about. Just saying. Did he forget? So, they all start waking up in another universe. And it's not the mirror universe like I was hoping, because big mirror universe fanboy here, but it was something nearly as good. The Confederacy of Earth. The subtext here. Jesus, the subtext of, Confederacy and all the current real world events as of the year 2022 and 2023 that mean now, but 2022 when this came out, which with all the political issues and very divisive political issues that are going on in the United States, this was another example of less the scalpel, more the hammer, smacking people in the face with it. The Confederacy of Earth, an extremely racist, very xenophobic, territorial, militaristic state with expansionistic goals that has conquered, destroyed and exterminated several alien species and enslaved everything in between. And the humans are the absolute ultimate power. They're bigger and stronger than the Terran Empire ever was. The Borg have been defeated. And just a shout out before we carry on, Annie Wershing as the Borg Queen. She was absolutely fantastic. To be honest, every actress that has played the Borg Queen has been really good, because they've always managed to pick outstanding performers to play it. And, Susanna Thompson, Alice Krieg, they've all done a good job. But Annie Wershing, she played it fun. She had a sense of humor. Alice Krieg was sensual. She's an absolutely gorgeous woman. She played the Borg Queen like a sexual creature. Susanna Thompson played her with menace. And Annie Wershing played her with humor. And she did such a good job. May she rest in peace. Now moving on. So they're in this alternate universe. We've got President Hansen, General Picard, blah blah blah. Obviously, Elnor is on the run. He's a slave. Laris is a slave because they're Romulans, dirty Xeno scum, basically. And the human race is all powerful, but Earth is a polluted nightmare. Another allegory for something. Can't put my finger on what. Very heavy-handed. Aside from those couple of complaints, though, I'm not in the pack of people that dislike Season 2. The whole Confederacy of Earth storyline I thought was really realistic. I also thought that it was an accurate portrayal of humanity. And, this corrupt, somewhat bureaucratic, militaristic, egotistical, arrogant, expansionistic, and violent. I thought, yeah, that's very human. I did like a lot of the storyline. Rios wakes up, and this is the bit that I didn't like. Rios wakes up and he's supposedly like a fantastic commander of the military, and yet he's in command of the La Serena still. And it's like, that ship is not a warship. It's barely able to fight, but yet in this universe it's a lot stronger. But yet we see they have ships that are like a variant of the Galaxy class in the CSS World Raiser. We know that they have ships which are of the Steamrunner class and other such vessels that exist in the main continuity, although there's no evidence that these vessels are any different. We can assume they probably were. The Confederacy had more powerful ships, and that took me out of it. But otherwise, I loved that story. They overcome the Confederacy. It's only like about a 3-episode arc of the show. They eventually get to go back in time. Ship is damaged, obviously shades of Star Trek 4 there. And the ship cloaks and sort of hides. They've got the Borg Queen on board, which adds an extra dimension to the show, which is absolutely brilliant. She eventually manages to sort of pseudo-assimilate people from that period of time on Earth and get them to come with her. She bonds with Girardi, literally gets inside of her head. The two of them, ultimately, spoilers by the way, they end up as basically a new entity. Girardi becomes a new Borg Queen, but a different type of Borg Queen, but it never really goes anywhere with that storyline in Season 3, unfortunately, which I wish they had, but they didn't, whatever. Borg are a big thing across this show. You had the artifacts, and you had Hugh in Season 1, and you've got the Borg Queen as a main character in season 2, and that's never been done before. A villain as one of the main characters, but she's also integral. Without her, they can't get back in time. They can't do the time warp. Again, Star Trek 4, such a good film, and also such a good thing to reference in this. And yeah, we have that slow motion walk that Girardi does when they realize that she's now the Borg Queen and she's walking away in a red dress. She looked stunning. The scene was so well lit. It was film noirish in the way it was done, with the music and the slow motion, and like I say, the red dress billowing in the wind, knowing that she's just done something horrendous behind her and she's walking away from pure devastation. It was a beautiful scene. It was well shot, well executed, well lit, well framed, everything, the set dressing. It was a beautiful scene. Hats off to it. And moving on from that, obviously they're in the past. I'm not going to go, again, episode by episode, but Jesus, I actually enjoyed this season. I thought, wow, this is so much better than season 1. Bear in mind, right, I'd ranked season 1 amongst the worst Trek I'd ever seen. It was badly scripted, badly written, it was badly paced. This season, however, damn, it was so much better. So much better. It had a few interesting choices, like Rios choosing to stay in the past, and they let him. At the end of the show, when Q dies, and also just to clear this up, right? And when you hear a lot of people arguing that why doesn't Guinan remember Picard, right? Right. Just in brief, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. That's how the Doctor puts it. But to translate, when Q altered the past, the future events that originally happened in the Next Generation were Picard and the crew of the Enterprise went back in time to the 19th century and met Guinan, did not happen. Therefore, this timeline's continuity of Guinan had not met a future version of Picard from the 2360s travelling back to the 19th century. So when he meets this Guinan in the 21st century, she had no idea who he was. Being an Ilorian, she was able to tell, obviously something was off, but she had never met him. That's why she didn't know him, just for those people who were very confused. And I know there were a lot of people confused, and I was one of them, and it took me a minute to think about it and thought, that makes sense. Yeah, that's actually well written. They actually thought of continuity. So you know what? Give them a hand. Give them a round of applause for actually remembering something, because there's a lot of stuff to remember in Star Trek. I know as a lore creator for Star Trek, there's so much lore. And I always try and stick to Alpha Canon. The reason I stick to Alpha Canon is because trying to integrate Beta Canon into that much Alpha Canon is damn near impossible. And it contradicts itself. It's all over the place. And quite frankly, there's a lot of it. There's so much of it that it becomes self-defeating to even try, so I just don't. It's easier if I stick to the Alpha Canon, like I'm doing here. You can stay with it. It's a lot easier. The style and the story and everything, at least you've got that, and you're not using Beta Canon to explain away continuity errors. You stick with the Alpha, and that's how I do it. Now, the Season 2 was a massive step up for me over Season 1. Huge leaps and bounds. Once again, Raffi, fantastic. Her relationship with Seven is sort of somewhat addressed. Very confusing why that was. I mean, the relationship between Seven and Chakotay always felt a little forced. It always felt like they were trying to give Chakotay something to do, and that was not a sexual innuendo in any way. It felt like they just wanted a happy ending for Seven, and they just kind of picked a character. They should have picked Harry. I mean, the guy couldn't get promoted. You might as well at least get him laid. Anyway, what was I saying? So yeah, fine. She gets with Raffi. The two of them sort of develop a relationship in this episode, in this season. It's fantastic. I don't mind that. And it's like, I know people were like, well, Seven dated Chakotay. Seven had never dated anybody. She didn't know her sexuality, and who used to say she might be bi? So who cares? Realistically, who cares? I tend to prefer it when they don't complicate Star Trek with relationships and personal issues, but sometimes it works. To me, I was indifferent to it. I don't think it added anything. I don't think it took anything away. Overall, Season 2 was a massive step up. The sort of Borg Queen Jurati mixture was a little weird. She then steals a ship and goes away. And, you know, this sort of things work out for the best. They get Q to snap them back once again to the future. And we get that delightful cameo with Will Wheaton. And we find out he's a traveller. I mean, we always kind of knew that. Again, going back to Star Trek Nemesis, I'm mentioning that film a lot. Kind of messes with that because he was at the wedding. And I know that's a deleted scene, but he is still in the film. He still appears. It's just he's not in it as much. So, you know, he's there. What was he, a traveller at that? And we don't even get an answer in season bloody 3, but whatever. We get to meet, you know, another Soon in the past who was actually much more fun than Alton. So there's that. And we also got to meet his daughter. And the fairly complicated story that came along with how those two characters affect the future and some of the things he was doing, which would ultimately lead to Arik Soon and the work that he was doing in the 22nd century that led to the human augments, and how these are all connected. And I thought that was a fun thing to do, which is one of the reasons I started doing the Soon series in the first place, although it's again my least popular series I've ever created, but whatever. Those characters are actually really well done in my opinion. I like that they made, and well, a sort of organic lore, let's call it that, another Soon, but he was also a villain. And he's the one that really started off the entire line. And it was really well done. I thought that the show, it was a little confusing why he was such a hero in the future, but other than that, I really liked his character. Because obviously Brent Spiner, a fantastic character actor, massively underrated. He's a little, I think, unfairly typecast as Data. A lot of people only think of Brent Spiner as Data, but if you look at his works, the things he's been in, Brent Spiner's an actor with a lot of range. He's a very, very talented actor, and he's massively underrated. But getting off that topic, he gets to show his range, like in A Fistful of Datas in the original run of the show in Next Generation. He got to show his range in that by playing pretty much every character in the episode. Data is a lot of fun. Brent Spiner is brilliant. And again, this show was just doing it right. It was doing it well. But again, they get back to the future. There's a big thing happening with the Borg vessel turning up, which is what happened at the beginning, and it kind of goes full circle. And they eventually managed to stop, you know, the cataclysm that was coming, and everything's all well and good, and the universe is saved. Woohoo. It's got a happy ending, basically. It's very Star Trek, and that's all well and good. But from here, which I think was actually a step up from season 1. I know a lot of people, Nerdrotic, for example, his channel, he mentions that season 2 was not as good as season 1, and he didn't like either. He has mentioned he likes season 3, but his reviews of the show, and I think I can't be 100% on this, I may be misquoting the Critical Drinker here, but the Critical Drinker, I think, had the same opinion, that season 1 was better than season 2. Season 3 is excellent. Me, personally, I think season 2 was a step up from season 1. There were certain elements of it that I didn't like. I loved that they killed off Q. I loved that we saw a bit of the emotion between him and Picard. I loved that they evolved the Borg, actually. That it gave them some extra, because they'd lost a lot of menace. And they're going to do even better with that in season 3. And there was a lot of things I really liked. I loved that they gave Will Wheaton more of a send-off. Things like that. I think that was all done well. And I think it was a step up in writing and quality over season 1. But season 3 is where it was at. Season 3 was so good. And I could do a video the same length as this obscenely long one I've just done, just talking about season 3. So I will try to not sort of sit here nerdgasming over it for the next 45 minutes. You're welcome in advance for that. I'm really trying. Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, oh my god, from episode 1 through to episode 10 was some of the finest Star Trek I have ever seen. Period. All of it. Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Discovery, the animated series, the original series, Prodigy, Lower Decks, Beta Canon books, Star Trek Online, any of it. This is amongst the best. In my experience with Star Trek. Some of the best storylines I've loved. I love the Xindi arc of Season 3 of Enterprise. I liked most of the storylines of Season 4 of Enterprise. I liked pretty much all of Deep Space Nine after Season 3. I like more sporadic with Voyager. I'm all over the place. Same with Next Generation and the original series. I don't massively love Lower Decks. I like all the Easter eggs and the fan service it has, but I don't like it as a show. And I haven't, as yet, of the making of this video, actually brought myself around to watch Star Trek Prodigy. Just because I watched at a Star Trek convention, I think it was in London. I think it might have been in... it might have been at the NEC in Birmingham, in the UK. Can't remember. I think it was London. And it was when Prodigy was first out. And it hadn't been released in the UK yet. And they showed the first 2 episodes at a screening there I paid for. I went to watch them and I was like, what the hell is this dumpster fire? That character is Grievous. That was my opinion. I remember even sharing a meme about it, that he was basically General Grievous. And I didn't like it. As a result of that, I haven't bothered to watch it. I will get to watching it because it's Star Trek and I have to watch it, but I haven't as of this episode at this moment in time. It doesn't help that my wife wants to watch it, and actually getting around to watching anything with my wife is kind of difficult because she keeps different hours to me, and I do a lot of this and a lot of other stuff, including have a full-time job, so it's difficult to find time. But that's just an excuse, and it's not a good one. So, Season 3. What do we get in Season 3? Well, we get Jack Crusher. We get the return of every other character. Jack Crusher, it's pretty obvious from Episode 1 that he's Picard's son. I mean, come on. It was written all over the walls. Him and Beverly always had like a thing, even though he wasn't a ghost. There was always a thing between those two. Always. And the fact that they now have a son wasn't shocking. With the death of Robert and basically the loss of the Picard lineage on that side, on Picard's family, there's no one to pass it on to. Now we've got Jack, named after Picard's friend, and although Picard actually does say, yeah, I'd have done the same thing. It's like, would you though? Would you? Your best friend? You banged your best friend's wife. She got pregnant and had a kid, and you name it after your best friend. You'd really do that? Really? It was a little weird that Beverly did it. It's like, I've had a kid with another man that I love, but I'm going to name it after my first husband. That was weird. But not something I'm particularly stuck on. It's just I found it really kind of morbid and strange. But, you know, morality in the 25th century is a little different to now. 24th when he would have been born. It's twice I've done that. Anyway. We learn that they're being chased by the ship, the Shrike. The Shrike is a little generic sci-fi. And I actually did a video with some predictions for Star Trek Season 3. And Jesus was I off. I was right on a couple of things, but I'd say like 80% of the stuff I guessed at for Star Trek Season 3. I was wrong. They brought back the Changelings. We see the ramifications of the Dominion War. There's references to Section 31. I'm not going to do an Easter egg hunt, as I've said, but there are a lot of Easter eggs in this episode. I mean, a lot. There's so many in this season, rather. But it's like, there's mentions of Section 31 and what they did to the Dominion. How they developed the plague, how they deployed it, what the effects were to the, to the Changelings. And it's like, come on. There's an element of understanding the Changelings, but then there's an element of they tried to wipe out the Bajorans. Let's list off some of their war crimes. They created a disease that destroyed an entire civilization, or near enough, in the Gamma Quadrant. They killed hundreds of millions of Cardassians out of spite. They tried to destroy the Bajoran sun, which would have resulted in the destruction of Bajor, which would have resulted in the deaths of billions, and the extermination, near enough, of the entire Bajoran race. They genetically engineered the Jem'Hadar and probably the Vorta as a race of slaves. They tried to conquer the Alpha Quadrant, and there's nothing good about conquest. So there's that as well. They're on board with slavery. They're fine with biological warfare. They're fine with weapons of mass destruction. The Changelings are not good people. I'm sorry to say it. Odo is a wonderful, wonderful person, and he's representative of what the Changelings could be, but not what they are. So, there's nothing here we can say, let's feel sorry for them. Fuck them. Damn Changelings. Come on. Anywho. the show did so well. The Shrike, fantastic ship, and another shout out to Amanda Plummer. Her character was funny and menacing at the same time. I had no idea she was a changeling either. I just thought she was human. That's why I originally thought that it was a Section 31 ship. I think I was tricked. I think there was an element of they wanted people to think stuff like that. I didn't realize she was a changeling. I still am unclear as to what her minions were. I think they're meant to be changelings. But are they? Really? They do that whole Breen thing where when they talk, they sound different. But yet she speaks in our language. She kills one of them. Remember, changelings don't kill each other. So, I mean, I know they're a little mad. And she was a result of genetic experimentation done upon her by Section 31. But still, a little strange. Anyway, moving on. Season 3 was immensely well made. Captain Shaw has got one of the finest storyline arcs in Star Trek ever, and he's in 9 goddamn episodes. That was one of the most quickfire, fantastic, and best written characters ever. In fact, this whole season is so well written that I do rank it as some of the finest Star Trek ever created. And there's going to be spoilers to shit in this episode, in this podcast, by the way, and obviously for seasons 1 and 2, but for season 3, I can't praise it enough. When you come aboard the Titan A, and his infamous no heard around the Federation, pretty much, is excellent. He seems racist, intolerant. He doesn't like Picard. He doesn't like Riker. He doesn't like jazz music. I mean, who does? But he's not what you expect at all. He doesn't like his first officer, although we do realize he was basically a bit of a dick with a heart of gold. It's not the point. He completely subverts our expectations, and the transformation of his character, although he does do a lot of like getting severely injured, he recovers and then gets his ass handed to him again. We find out he doesn't like Picard, spoilers ahead, because he was at the Battle of Wolf 359. He was a survivor. He blames Picard, even though he shouldn't, because he should know intellectually that being a Borg is not a choice. You're a slave. You're part of the collective. You don't have a choice. You have no free will. He should understand that, but he clearly doesn't, or at least on an intellectual level he does, but on an emotional level he doesn't. He does come about eventually. The Titan A, by the way, I do not buy the Titan A as a refitted USS Titan. The Luna class and the New Constitution and the Neo Constitution class don't even look the same. And to use an analogy, it'd be like converting a smart car into a Range Rover. They don't look the same, they've not got the chassis, and they're a different size. You can't convert a Luna class into a Neo Constitution. The only way to do it is if the USS Titan was retired and then they scrapped it, but they thought, you know what, we put a pretty new warp core in this, a pretty new computer core, we'll take those out, we'll strip off the hull paneling, melt it down, reforge it into new hull paneling for the new ship, take out some of the struts and framework, and basically use what we can. The only thing I can think of is it used recycled components from the Titan, but is not a refit, in the same way the USS Enterprise and the USS Enterprise A were technically, originally, before another one was built, were technically the same ship. The refit, it was in the name. It was refitted. Starfleet chose after that not to do that because their investment of resources to refit an existing vessel into a more modernized design was more labor intensive for stripping it down and rebuilding it than just building one new ship from start. You didn't have to worry about incompatibility of components, technology, nothing. It was simpler. That's why you don't get a lot of refitted Constitution class ships floating around. They just built new ones. Anyway, so moving on. That ship was beautiful. I love that ship. I find it a little weird that it became the Enterprise G at the end. So is the Enterprise F still floating around? Was that destroyed by the Borg? Or did it survive? Is this a new flagship, or is it just an homage? Is it just a namesake? Who knows? But Season 3, cannot praise it enough. It's so good. I don't want to... As I said, I'm going to try to curve my excitement for this show because it was so good. But its basic overarching story was trying to figure out who was trying to destroy the Federation. What were they doing? And then it turns out they're working for the Borg. The Changelings, the Dominion, and the fucking Borg. I mean, I don't even think it was the Dominion, really. These were renegade, these were rogue Changelings working with basically what was left of the Borg. And the one thing I'm going to cover, the one thing I'm going to talk about, it was brilliant to see all the cast back together. I didn't like them bringing back Data. I did absolutely adore the performance given by Brent Spiner once again, especially that moment where he's flicking between B4, Alton, Lore, and Data. And that was beautiful. That was so well done. That man needs a lot of love for the performance in this show. Bringing him back, though, made no sense. It's like they wanted to bring him back. They found a way. That's fine, but they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have brought Data back. I'm sorry. I'm going to say that. They shouldn't have brought him back, in my opinion. They should have left him dead. They killed him again in Season 1, and then they bring him back in Season 3. It's like, how many Datas are there? I mean, technically speaking, this isn't Data. Technically it is, but it isn't. It's part lore, part before, and part Alton. It's Data, primarily, but he's absorbed them others, or rather lore became him. But they're always there. They're going to be in there somewhere. Lore's experiences, B4's, whatever, Alton, they're all in there a little bit. This isn't truly Data. At least that was my interpretation. I could be way off. Feel free to tell me in the comments below. But the one thing I will chat about now is Alice Krieg's reappearance, fantastic, and that battle with that Super Borg cube. I will say one thing that really bugged me when watching it, and I actually had a conversation with someone in the comments of one of my previous videos about that Borg vessel, and he called it, by the way. He knew that ship was in Jupiter. He said, "Is it not in Jupiter?" And I was like, "Nah, it can't be Jupiter, because there's space stations in orbit of Jupiter. There's colonies on the moons. There's thousands of ships buzzing around the system. Starfleet has hundreds of ships around. Thousands of civilian ships, alien vessels travel through the system every day. Probably more than thousands, probably tens if not hundreds of thousands of ships, both warp and impulse, travel past that bloody planet every day, or at least are in the system. There must be hundreds of them pass within sensor range of that gas giant every day. And not one of them saw this thing? I get it, they opened up a transwarp conduit into the planet and that's how they hit. But Starfleet doesn't monitor the planet? They don't extract gases from it? They don't send probes into it? They don't explore it? It's not still studied? At all? In any way? How did they miss that ship? And how did it take the Enterprise D to find it? Had it moved closer to the surface? It wasn't really well explained. Now, that ship was clearly a supercube. And the Star Wars style sort of flying inside it, Millennium Falcon-esque, that this ship did, was a fantastic watch. It was brilliant. And again, Data, props off, and Deanna Troi again. And she didn't crash the Enterprise this time, so woohoo. Those scenes, brilliant. I do question, why the hell does the Borg Cube A have a big hole in the side of it for the Enterprise to fly into? Why is it laid out inside so a ship can move around in it? And why does it have internal disruptors? Now, there are certain things I can explain away. I think I'm going to be canonically correct here. The Borg are cannibalizing their own ship. They were dying. They weren't the collective they once were. And that's why when they're like, the ship's taking damage, because if you look at the older battles between the Enterprise and the Borg, this is an older ship. The Borg should have been fully adapted to them. The reason the Borg analyze and adapt is because there are countless trillions of drones figuring out with augmented computer systems how to adapt to the weapons being used against it. We are looking at the remains of the Borg. There's only a handful of drones aboard this thing. What, thousands at most, and most of which are still functional? There may have been many more drones, but they weren't working. You're looking at pretty much the entire collective here. And as far as we know, there's no other Borg out there that are under her control. So the Enterprise's weapons are far more effective because the Borg's defenses are not at 100%. They're not even at 50%. It's relying purely on normal shields and conventional weapons. Why it can't hit the Enterprise I did wonder, because 4th, 25th century weapons are pretty damn accurate. In fact, missing your target in the 23rd century was pretty unusual. 22nd century was a bit more forgivable. 24th, 25th, it should be sacrilege. Shouldn't be able to miss, especially the Borg, they're so advanced. But my question was, why were the weapons inside? And there was a lot of them too. It wasn't like there was the odd tractor beam or odd disruptor inside. There was a lot of weapons firing at the Enterprise. Why? You just don't have the hole. It'd be simpler. Just don't have a big hole inside of the ship that you then need to defend. And I don't think the ship was damaged, if anyone wants to think that. It's my observation was that was what the ship was supposed to look like. It was a mini Unimatrix. It was a sort of a big transmitter, basically. That's what all those spikes were. They're usually spikes like that in Star Trek are normally subspace transceivers. You see them on things like the Romulan drone and the Flea ship and even some Starfleet vessels. That's what the antennas are on the nacelles and on the deflector and stuff. There's just a lot of them on this cube because obviously it's doing a lot. And, you know, they've modified the transporters, we learn, and they basically managed to very cleverly and very sinisterly and make the Borg a threat again despite everything. They've assimilated probably millions of people, because it won't just be the Starfleet transporters that were affected, it will have been civilian. And that will have been a lot of people under the age of 25 going through the transporters and turning into drones. Men, women and children. That would have been millions upon millions, probably billions of people across the Federation. Now, assuming they only affected the ones in the Sol system, that's probably still a good, 2-3 billion people? Luckily, it turned out okay. Most of the ships were only disabled, not destroyed. Space dock survived, although damaged, and Earth wasn't bombarded, although I imagine there was a lot of fighting going on the surface. So, yeah, probably millions did die. It's a good chance, but... or at the very least, hundreds of thousands would be my guess. And that is only a guess. There's no canon. As I said, I always stick to alpha canon. But what would you say? I'd say people fighting on the surface, someone's going to pick up a rifle, right? Or a sword or something. Now, the Borg are very good at adapting. They realized that direct assaults on Earth didn't work, so they came up with this long-form plan. It was genius. They used the changelings to implement the genetic alteration into all the people as they went through the transporters. It's absolutely brilliant and is very sinister and quite damn scary. And it made the Borg dangerous again, and I really liked that. And many things about Season 3 I liked. They ended it on a poker match, just like they did The Next Generation. They ended it perfectly. Worf was lovable and amazing. Raffi got a proper storyline in this that turned her from grumpy drug addict to basically hero of the Federation. Everyone got a happy ending. And they did a big fake out where it seemed like they were going to kill either Riker or Worf, or possibly both, and then didn't kill either. And I don't know if I was disappointed by that. I thought they were going to be brave and kill one of them, and they didn't. But, you know, minor gripes. Very, very, very minor gripes. In fact, even my gripes about Season 1 are mostly minor. I just find it to be fairly badly written. But overall, I've really enjoyed it. And I've absolutely loved it. I don't think I want a Season 4. I know people are calling for it. I'd rather... if they're going to do something else. That end credit scene, in case you missed it, you're going to learn about it now. Q is back. And he's saying that, oh, humans, you think of time as so linear. Q is still dead, but this is possibly a Q from before he died. This is what he was off doing when, you know, he wasn't on Earth tormenting Picard during Season 2 and stuff. So, he's alive, sort of, but also dead. It's interesting. It's very, very Q, and I'm okay with that. Or he simply lied to Picard at the end of Season 2, which I don't think he did. But, you know, it's an interesting idea. It's a very interesting idea. I don't know if I liked it. But, it was, again, it's a minor gripe. Very minor. I think it's like cowardly to bring him back after you've killed him. It was brave to kill him, and then to bring him back is almost cowardly. And it's like, no, don't do that. But it's a minor gripe. It's very, very minor. They've done everything else so well. I have faith that they're going to do this justice as well. And I think I would prefer a spin-off show rather than a continuation. I don't know if I want a series purely about Jack Crusher. I don't think his character's strong enough to carry it. But Captain 7, absolutely. With Commander Raffi commanding the Enterprise G. Don't know if it's the flagship of the fleet, but definitely I could see that doing a season, even a mini-series or a little mini-movie, possibly even something like Picard. 2 or 3 seasons with 10 episodes each. I could see it. I could see that, and I'd be down for it. But overall, I've enjoyed it. I've loved this show. I've not milked it for all that it's worth. I'm not that kind of YouTuber. I don't like release top 10s or breakdowns or, like I say, Easter egg hunts and stuff. I do respect the ones who do, and I actually watch their videos. But so many people do it, I don't want to do that kind of stuff. I don't normally voice too many of my own opinions, but I wanted to do an opinion piece. I'm gonna try and do these more regularly. These are long form. I don't know how many people have actually made it to the end of this video. If you did make it, by the way, to the end of this video, put I'm going to say little yellow smiley face into your comment, just to let me know you made it all the way to the end of the episode. All the way to the end of this podcast. That's if you're watching it on YouTube and I haven't actually decided to put these up for podcasts, in which case maybe just tell me. But I am curious. I need to know how well this does, so I know whether or not there's something that people want to hear me ramble on about Star Trek or other subjects that I'll be doing. But this series of podcasts will all be about Star Trek and the different series and what I've enjoyed about them, what I've not enjoyed about them, and what I hope you have enjoyed about them. You can tell me about in the comments. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll actually get my wife to do some of these. Because I keep trying, and she does like Star Trek, but she's always like, but I don't like it as much as you. I'll sit there numb because I can't. See, I do this stuff off memory. I very rarely do any research, really. So, it's all up there. And she's like, I can't do that. I'm like, yeah, but who cares? No one will give a crap. It'll be fun. So, fingers crossed, might get her in to do it. And possibly another YouTuber, hopefully. I'll be doing something like this with. That's a bit of a negotiation happening at the moment. But there we go. We're at the end of this after what is now the longest video I've ever created. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed listening to me ramble. Hope that you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let me know, because I need the feedback. And again, if you do leave a comment, put a little yellow smiley face on it just to let me know that you made it all the way to the end of the episode. And additionally, tell me what you thought about Star Trek Picard, because I don't want you to just take my opinions. I want you to have your own opinion. It's not up to me to tell you what you do and don't like. You either liked it or you didn't. Or you've not watched it and you've just listened to this entire thing, and now you know pretty much everything that happens, which is good for you, I guess. Go watch it if you've not. I'm going to bring this to an end now. I'm going to stop. Thank you for watching. I know the video wasn't exactly great going along with it. I'm not entirely certain if I've gone back over this after I recorded it and put any kind of GIFs or anything in. I don't think I'm planning to do that. I'm leaning towards I'm just going to leave it with the GIF that I created to be for this episode, because I expect this, because of the length of it, people are more likely to just listen to it. So I don't know how entertaining the video aspect of this has been. I may, if you give me some feedback, I may try and do the video a little more interesting in future. I might even do it as an actual video recording, which I considered doing, but in my head that's not what a podcast is, so I'm trying to avoid that. Plus my camera's not exactly working too good at the moment. Need a new one. And I don't know if it'd make it through an hour-long recording. Anyway, we're at the end. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Hit the bell notification if you're watching this on YouTube. And bye-bye.